Well, hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hope everybody is having a nice, what is it, like 80% day? We're almost to the weekend. We got Friday in front of us and then a nice weekend. Mallory starts her junior Vikings cheerleading this weekend. So we're very excited around here to go watch the first football game for the seventh graders and see her on the sideline. She's super excited for that. Getting ready to sit down and record episode 11 already of Mike in the Midwest. Today's show is something I thought about when I was listening to another podcast the other day where they were mentioning restaurants that we don't have in St. Louis. And I'm going to do an episode on that down the line. But it made me think about the places my grandma took the grandkids to eat. She was, the more I thought about it, she really kind of was a connoisseur of St. Louis fast food dining. And she always took us around as a special treat when she would watch us. So today's show is going to be dining around St. Louis with Grandma. Hope you enjoy this one, episode 11. Let's get it going. Welcome to episode 11 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast exclusively for the subscribers, the patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast. Thank you so much for being here. This is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. And this show is just about growing up here in St. Louis, Missouri. Some memories I have from around town, how things may be similar to you, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, maybe not even in the United States. Maybe you're down in the South or up North. I think we have a lot of stuff in common, but what I like when I listen to a podcast, I like learning about other places and, how things are similar and different. So we're going to talk about that today. Last episode 10, was all about back to school and memories with that. And I always want to start off the new show here on a Thursday. This one's on September 10th, 2020, by looking back and looking at the comments from last week's show. I just want to send a shout out to Mr. Christopher Armstrong, one of my great guests over at the Magic for Less. He says, keep them coming. Love these podcasts. And also Mr. Scott Wortman, who is apparently a teacher down in Nashville. And he says that procedures, relationships, everything like that is so important at the beginning of the school year. I can't agree more. And he also says any first year teacher, any new teacher should get Dr. Harry Wong's book, The First Days of School. I agree. It's a big book, but it really walks you through setting up an environment for a successful school year. So we talked about going back to school. I hope that everybody is so far having a great year, whether it's virtual at your kitchen table, maybe your teacher back in the physical building. Hang in there. First days are the rough days, are the ones that exhaust you the most. But we're going to make it through 2021 school year and have a great one. So hopefully we'll kind of settle into our patterns and our routines, and we'll make this year great. But let's hop into episode 11's main topic. And this is dining around St. Louis with Grandma. Now, let me give you a little background on my grandma and my grandpa. This is my Rallman side of the family. These are my dad's parents. They lived probably about 1 mile away from me growing up, not very far. I could ride my bike over there and see them pretty easily. Now, you did have to cross to get over to Grandma and Grandpa Rallman's house. You did have to cross Florissant Road, which was a kind of a busy road, like a 4-lane road. Not, wasn't a highway or anything, but it was still something that our parents didn't want us crossing all the time, but we still did. And these were the grandparents that I spent the most of my time with growing up. Once we, after 6th grade, before 7th grade, we moved into a new subdivision. So we had to sell our house that I grew up in and then moved to this new house that was being built on the other side of Florissant. And in that interim where we sold our house and our other house wasn't finished, we actually lived with these grandparents for about 3 months over the summer. So I was very close to them. We all went to church together, and Grandma was an interesting lady. Everybody loved my grandma Ruth. We called her Rufus, but that's what, I don't know why. That's kind of the name that everybody kind of kidded by calling her, but Grandma Ruth Rallman. And she was, my grandma, my grandpa grew up actually not kind of poor. They were really poor. They grew up in Appalachia in a town called Catlettsburg, Kentucky, which is near Ashland, Kentucky, which is my grandpa always compared it to where the 3 states of Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky meet in the mountains there. So they didn't have much. They both came from huge families, got married in Kentucky, and that day moved to St. Louis because my grandpa got a job as a cement mason. And so the day they got married in Kentucky, they moved to St. Louis to get it so my grandpa could get a job. And the rest is history. That's why I'm here, Mike, in the Midwest here in St. Louis. But they were very frugal folks, but they went to church every week, not missing anything. And grandma liked to get out though and enjoy some dining around town. So I'm going to tell you about some of the places that she always took the grandkids. Maybe I know you have a lot of these places in your town, but maybe some of these places you don't have. And they were really places my grandma loved. So let's start off with one that I know my East Coast friends are going to love. She would take the grandkids. And when I talk about the grandkids, I think I've mentioned this before. She had 4 grandkids. I was the oldest. And then I had my cousin Chris, my two cousins, Chris and Derek. They lived down in southern Missouri, right down by Arkansas, in a small town called Poplar Bluff. Chris was about 2 years younger than me. Then I had my sister, who's 4 years younger than me. Then my youngest cousin, Derek, Chris's brother, who was the youngest. There was 4 of us, 3 boys and my sister. And when they would come into town, because they would come from the country up to St. Louis to go to a baseball game, or their parents were flying out on a vacation. They left Chris and Derek with my grandparents. We always had a good time. And grandma would always splurge and take us out. Now, one of the places I still remember, we love doing this. And it's funny because on my runs, I think about these things. When I listen to other shows, these memories come back. And that's kind of why I like doing this podcast, just random memories. One of the places grandma would take us is Dunkin Donuts. And I mean, this was the biggest treat when all 4 of us were together, Chris, Derek, my sister Jill, and myself. She would say, like if we all spent the night there because she was watching Chris and Derek because their parents were out of town, if you're good, when we get up in the morning, we're going to go to Dunkin Donuts. And now this wasn't like we just went there and picked up a donut. What we did, I think this is why it was so fun for us. And this isn't such a big deal, I don't think, in 2020, but we would go in Dunkin Donuts and we'd sit at the counter. Now, if you remember how old Dunkin Donuts, I don't even think they have this anymore, but our old Dunkin Donuts we always went to had a counter that was probably about 15 to 20 spinny stools, like a kind of like at a bar, where there would be somebody behind the counter that would refill your coffee or, get you a donut if you wanted it. And the thing we always got when we went to Dunkin Donuts, this was a huge deal. They were called munchkins. Now they're called donut holes, but you would get your munchkins and we get, a bunch of them. We get a big box. And the thing was, they weren't just glazed munchkins. You had like chocolate glazed. You had some of them with powdered sugar. Pro tip, if you're eating any kind of powdered sugar donut, don't inhale while it's close to your mouth. You will choke yourself. You probably know that from life experience by now. But we would get the box. We'd have to kind of jockey like who's going to get what, what proportions we're going to get, who likes what the best. But we would get those munchkins and we'd sit down at the counter. Grandma would get her coffee. She would probably have like 2 munchkins for breakfast. As much as we talk about all these places she liked to eat, she didn't eat much. I think she liked the social aspect of being there. My cousins and my sister, would scarf those things down and just have a good old time hanging out with grandma on the stools right there, watching all the other senior citizens kind of read the paper, drink their coffee. And it was a big deal to go to Dunkin Donuts. We love doing that. So that's one of my childhood memories is grandma taking us to Dunkin Donuts. Now, another place that grandma used to take us here in St. Louis, this place is no longer with us. It was called Burger Chef, not Burger King. It became Burger King later, but it was called Burger Chef. Now, the only memory that I have with Burger Chef is that she would take us here for breakfast as well. But the thing I loved about Burger Chef, and again, she would take all the grandkids if we didn't go to Dunkin Donuts, they had hash rounds, not hash browns, but hash rounds. They were the little circular hash rounds. And we loved those. Could we go to Burger Chef? Now, Burger Chef's not around anymore, but we used to love going there. Now, kind of on my grandma used to like to take us out to breakfast. As I look at this list, because a lot of these are breakfast places she would take us. Another place that she would take us a lot is grandkids for breakfast. I remember this. It was on Lindbergh Boulevard here in St. Louis, corner of Newhalls Ferry. It was right behind the school where I taught at for 17 years. It was called Hardees. Now, you may not have Hardees in your town, but you might have a Carl's Jr. Same thing. And I want to say that maybe Burger Chef became Hardee's and not Burger King. Because it was the same building now that I think about it. Yeah, so I think Burger Chef became Hardee's. I don't know. We'll have to do some research on that. But the thing grandma would take us to, now grandma liked this because she's a country girl, right? She's from Kentucky, Appalachia. We would always go to Hardee's, and the thing we would get, bar none, we'd all get biscuits and gravy. You would get this styrofoam box, and it had a Hardee's is still known for their great biscuits. I haven't been to Hardee's in ages, but I know they have great biscuits. And then this little styrofoam, little cup of gravy. And she would always tell us, take your biscuit, tear it up with your hand, into little pieces, dump your sausage gravy on top. Oh man, I'm getting hungry thinking about this. And that was breakfast for us. Maybe you got a little hash browns on the side, but that was it. Now, the thing also I remember about Hardee's breakfast that we used to do with grandma is that if you remember back in the late 80s, mid 80s, Hardee's had these all the time, and they were the glasses, the real glass drinking glasses. And you could purchase those for like 99 cents a piece. And each week they would change either the item in the series or the whole series total. So I remember we used to get Smurfs glasses. I remember Flintstones glasses. They had Star Wars. So one of the things was to go there. Grandma would get us a glass too. We'd keep that. I wish I had those things still today. I don't anymore, but man, that would be so cool to go back and see, the Hardee's glasses with like the Smurfs on them or the Flintstones. That was always a special treat. And the thing was, we were all, like 10 and younger. The glasses might not even have made it home. They were made out of glass, but I think we did make them because I think she made us keep them at her house and we could use them on Sundays or something. But yeah, those glasses at Hardee's were something I totally remember. Now, another place that we used to go with grandma, a couple places. These were sit down restaurants. These were like fancy dining where she would take us on a Saturday night with grandpa and we'd have a big dinner. Now I mentioned the place that was in the Dillards on one of the previous shows, the garden room, I think it was called. This was kind of another place they would take us. One was called Romine's Chicken. This place was in a bad part of town. It was near downtown St. Louis, kind of an urban area. You had to go through these shady roads. Yeah, they loved Romine's Chicken. So they'd take us down there, and I got to admit, they had awesome fried chicken. So it was always a big deal when they took us there. But as I recall, my grandparents took us to these places that it was just all senior citizens and like 4 grandkids. But they had good food. So Romine's Chicken was a treat for us. That was just a local thing, I think. Another place she would take us, now, this was a special tradition in our family. And you might think, God, this is such a weird tradition because we're going to get into something that was more traditional. But on Christmas morning, as we got older, we always met grandma and grandpa. Now, this was just my family, my mom and dad and myself and my sister. We'd meet grandma and grandpa, and we'd go have Christmas morning breakfast at a place called Sambo's. And I don't think they're around anymore. What it became was like a Denny's. It was a diner. And so we would go there after we opened our gifts from Santa, and all that stuff. We would get up and we'd meet grandma and grandpa at Sambo's for a couple years. Then it became Denny's. And we just have that, traditional like Grand Slam breakfast, eggs, bacon, sausage. But it was just the fact that, they wanted to have breakfast with us, but then grandma and grandpa would come back to our house and see all the gifts that Santa brought us. And we would hang out there for a little while, but it was one of those memories that as a kid, you don't really appreciate it. But then as you get to be an adult and you're going through your own family's traditions, you start to see that was important. And so the funny thing is too, is you might think that you could get right into Denny's on a Christmas morning because everybody's at home. I remember this, like being 10 or 11 years old, there was a crazy crowd to get in Denny's on Christmas morning. So just a heads up, if you want to start that tradition with your family, you might be waiting. Now, as grandma got older and, the kids grew up and stuff like that, and she was kind of, this is actually after my grandpa passed. She lived for about another 10 years. One of the places grandma would go, I think, just to get socialization. And I got to tell you about this story because I love it. She would go to our White Castle. Now, if you don't have a White Castle in your town, I know some places don't. Think about just like mini slider burgers. There's a place called Crystal in the South, very similar. I don't know what else would be similar on like the West Coast, but White Castles are little square burgers. if you're going there, if you're a guy like me, you don't just order like one hamburger. Like when I go to White Castle, I got to get at least six, like because they're small little burgers. But my grandma would go to White Castle. This is again after my grandpa passed every morning, and she would get like this is one of the things, if you think of White Castle, you think of sliders and their fries and onion rings, stuff like that. But they were open for breakfast. I remember as a kid when you drove through the White Castle drive-through, they would have a sign that said White Castles for breakfast. Why not? And I'm thinking, because they're White Castles. You probably don't want these sliders with onions on them at 7 o'clock in the morning, but you know what? I did that a couple times. Anyway, so she would go to White Castle in the morning, and I think it was just, again, a hangout in Florissant for some of the senior citizens. And she would get this little donut that was like 89 cents and a small coffee. And so she would sit there for like $2 and hang out for like 2 hours and talk to everybody and everything. But everybody knew my grandma. I'm not kidding. If you came through Florissant, everybody knew Ruth Rahman. Everybody knew her and everybody loved her. It was amazing. But she would go there $2 and hang out for 2 hours. My grandma was anything but frugal. That's what she did. Now, another thing that she did was now this was her dinner. When she wanted a fancy dinner, grandma would go to Cracker Barrel. Now, everybody knows what a Cracker Barrel is if you're here in the United States. It's a place that's it's got a little store as you enter with kind of trinkets. It's like an old timey store. This is totally up my grandma's alley because all the stuff in this little store as you enter the Cracker Barrel restaurant it's grandma stuff. It's like sweatshirts that says "I love my grandkids." It's bird feeders. It's old candy that you would have gotten in a store 50 years ago. I like it. I mean, we love Cracker Barrel, but the good thing about Cracker Barrel is the food is comfort food. It's biscuits and gravy. It's chicken and dumplings. It's country ham, stuff like that. Lots of great sides. But grandma would go to Cracker Barrel and she would order the kids meal and get her senior discount. And I think she would go there and have a whole meal for like $3. Unbelievable. And the waitresses loved her there. The waiters, there were, she would meet friends there, other seniors. And it was just one of those things. Grandma was like, I call her on the phone. Well, I'm going to Cracker Barrel. I got to go. And she'd be like, yep, got to get my $3.87 kids meal with my senior discount. And she loved it. I mean, that was something that made grandma happy. And because it made grandma happy, it made everybody in the family happy. Now, another thing that, another place that my grandma liked to go, and you might like to hear this one. And if you go, I have a video and photo evidence of this time after time. I mentioned that my grandma and grandpa went to the same church that my family went to. We all went to church in Ferguson, Missouri. And after my grandpa passed, my grandma still went to the church, and my dad still goes to that church to this day. He plays the drums on Sundays and the services. But after services, after my grandpa passed, my dad would take my grandma out to lunch. Now, do you know where he took her out to lunch? This was her choice every Sunday. They went to Taco Bell. That's right. They went to Taco Bell. Now, are we connecting the dots here, people? That's why I go, right? But my grandma would go, and my grandma always got her order was a Mexican pizza, which that's gone as well. Everything's going away. It's so sad. Grandma's gone, and the Mexican pizza's gone after November 5th, and a nachos. And she would get that. My dad would just get some burritos, and they would always take their picture all dressed up after church. They were at the Taco Bell. And that kind of warmed my heart as well. Now, one of the things I do got to throw in here, because it sounds like grandma only went to Hardees, White Castle, Denny's, Romines, Burger Chef, Dunkin Donuts, Taco Bell, Cracker Barrel. Like my grandma hit the circuit, right, for the fast food and the sit-down restaurants in St. Louis, which she did. But this is not who grandma was. Every Sunday. Now, I remember this from the earliest memories I can remember. Every Sunday, we had a tradition in the Rallman household. And so what happened was we all went to church in Ferguson. So my grandma, we had a big Baptist church we went to 3 services every Sunday at 8:00 and 9:30 and at 10:45. So my grandma would go early. She would go to her Sunday school class and then go to the middle worship service. And then she would duck out. So we always went to Sunday school and then the late service at 10:45. So we get out of church about 12:15. Well, grandma would come home at about 10:30, 10:45 and start making Sunday dinner for the entire family. And every Sunday after church, we'd go over to her house and we would have either pot roast, or we would have chicken nuggets, or we'd have meatloaf, or we'd have turkey, or we'd have ham. But we always had all the sides. We had mac and cheese, we had rolls, we had green beans and corn. A lot of times she had this thing she kept trying to pawn off on us called Waldorf salad. I think it was an old people thing. I don't know. I never ate it, but you saw it a lot in like fancy places and places where elderly folks dine. She always had Waldorf salad. I think she really liked it. But we had this big meal every Sunday after church, right about 12:30. And during the summertime, so from like say May to about this time of the year, about Labor Day, my grandpa, he had a sun deck on the back of his house, on the back of their house there, but he also built this gazebo that was huge right off the sun deck and had a ceiling fan inside of it. It was really fancy. So on Sundays after church in the summer, I still remember, and I wish I would have, taken these things and taken them to heart more, that we'd have Sunday dinner with the whole family under the gazebo outside with my grandma. And my grandma was a great cook. I mean, with this comfort food that she made every single Sunday. And there was always a dessert too. Chocolate cream pie, cookies. She always called it a newlywed. That was, I don't know if you know what a newlywed is. It's called a cake roll. And it was kind of like it looked like a log, but it was chocolate cake on the outside with ice cream, and then chocolate cake, and you'd cut it, like you would kind of a log, and everybody get a piece. It was one of those things that when I think of grandma, she did a lot of cool stuff. She worked at a grocery store. She drove a school bus. She was a great, awesome grandma to us. She was a good mom to my dad and uncle. I mean, she was amazing, but it was always one of those things that I think older folks tend to think that food and comfort really equals love. And so she would take us places to dine that we didn't get to go otherwise. But the best meal, as we wrap this up today, was Sunday dinner at grandma's house. Having grandma's meatloaf, it was unbelievable. Mashed potatoes and gravy, all these amazing things. But when I think about all these places, when I see a White Castle, or I see a Dunkin Donuts, even when I see it on the boards at a hockey game, like if I'm watching a hockey game that the Boston Bruins are playing and there's a Dunkin sign on the boards, I think of grandma. I think of Munchkins. I think of sitting there with my cousins and all the fun we had. When I see a Cracker Barrel on the side of the interstate, I think of grandma's kids meal that she got the senior discount on for $3.84. It's one of those things. White Castle's, grandma sitting there scamming the system, $2 for 2 hours of entertainment. But she was an amazing woman. She was a great grandma. And, I think it's fun to look back on these places that she took us. Now, as we wrap this up, I want to see in the comments below, do you have any memories like this with a loved one in your family? Did they take you someplace that, looking back, it's still around? Maybe it's not, but it's a special place that you hold in your heart. If you could go back and have that Hardees biscuit and gravy with grandma, what would you give for that? That'd be incredible. But those memories are with us forever. So I was thinking about my grandma this week, thinking about all the cool stuff she did for us. There's so many other stories I'm going to share down the line, but dining with grandma around St. Louis is something that we definitely did, and we loved every minute. So that's going to do it for today's Mike in the Midwest. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Hopefully, more importantly, it triggered a memory for you, for a loved one. Maybe you think about, a special holiday. Maybe on birthdays, you went somewhere with your grandma or grandpa or aunt and uncle. Something like that. I hope this does find you well, and I hope that it does trigger some great memories for you. And please do share those either in the YouTube comments or here on Patreon. I do want to thank you so sincerely for being a patron of the show. Please stick with us. It's helping so very much. You are keeping the podcast going through these times, and the support has been incredible. I hope you're enjoying the chat over on Discord. If you haven't joined us on Discord, go over to the Patreon page, find that post, click on it, and come on over. We chat 24/7 on Discord. And it's been so much fun talking with everybody about all kinds of stuff. So we are going to get out of here. I thank you for being here. I thank you for really supporting the show and letting us keep this stuff going. We'll be back again next Thursday with another Mike in the Midwest. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. Oh, I just saw that, Lisa, on the very end. Dairy Queen every Tuesday on grocery shopping trips. Yes. Dairy Queen is a place that most people have, which is actually, Paige worked at a Dairy Queen. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I love, and we go to Dairy Queen too much. I get my peanut butter parfait all the time. Save this real quick. Mike in the mid. I can't believe we're already up to episode 11. Hanging around STL with grandma. I got to find those pictures of my dad and my grandma at Taco Bell because my dad would post them on his Facebook page all the time. All right, we're out of here. You guys have a good Thursday. I'm going to post this on the Patreon and get it out on the feed. Take care, Lisa. Take care, everybody.